On. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening. This is your boy CIZY back at it again with another episode of the Voices of Value podcast, where we bring different individuals from around the world, from around the states, from different backgrounds, different industries onto the show to kind of share a little bit about their story, most importantly, but also share valuable insights into the careers, into the industries, into the businesses they're building or working inside. So we're back at it again with another episode with a new guest, and his name is Luther Wilson. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, brother.
All right, Collis. First off, thank you for the invite. I appreciate you having me on your podcast. I'm Luther Wilson III. I'm a Kansas City native, was born in KCK, and as a kid, moved to suburbia with the family, and grew up there, just playing sports. That was my love growing up. Played basketball, did track and field, a little bit of baseball, a little bit of football. So that was what consumed my life growing up. And then, just going to school, went off to college, just trying to make the right moves, right? Doing as what most people would advise you to do, right? Go to school,
sir.
Graduate, get good grades if you can along the way, work hard, right? Do what you got to do. So I just kind of followed that path. And I'm sure we'll touch on it as the podcast progressed, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, I got into business at a pretty young age. I was, I think, more or less a natural entrepreneur, and just, even though I consider myself introverted, I love people a lot and enjoyed interacting with people ever since I was a little kid. And it's just, as you get older, you come out of your shell and you start to expand on that. And so, yeah, man, that's a little bit about me. Just a Kansas boy through and through.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love it, man. And I want to, dive in even deeper into, your childhood when you were 5, 6, 7 years old. I know, like you mentioned, you were really into sports, but did you think or what were you dreaming of being when you were growing up? I know that at a young age, we kind of transitioned through a lot of thoughts about what we want to be. What were some of yours? Mine were firefighter, astronaut, NFL player. When you were 5, 6, 7 years old, what were you thinking you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, man. So as a kid, I thought I wanted to be an NBA player. And as I got a little bit older, around like middle school and a little bit in high school, I thought I wanted to be an Olympian in the track and field. And so those were what really I thought about. I was the youngest of 5, all right? So I had 2 older brothers, and they both played basketball growing up and in college. And so I looked up to them quite often, or quite a bit. And so that is kind of what, propelled that dream, I guess you could say.
And what do you feel like were some positive and negative dynamics in regards to the relationship with your older siblings and being the youngest of 5? I'm the youngest of 8, and I know there's some positives and some negatives that come with it. What would you highlight first as a few positives that you really took away from being the youngest child and got to learn from some of your older siblings, and also just thinking about the dynamic of the relationship between you and your parents being the youngest as well? Could you dive into that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I'm, in a way, kind of an only child because my mom was married previously before she met my father. So on my mom's first marriage, that's when she had my 4 siblings. So there was a period of time where my mom was single trying to raise 4 kids. And that was prior to her meeting my father. And so there was quite a gap as far as age goes. So between me as the youngest and the next youngest sibling, there's a 7-year gap. And just seeing that dynamic with my father, meeting my mom, getting together, them getting married, having me, and seeing my dad kind of take in, my 4 siblings as well. Like, I think a big part of what I noticed a lot, I watched the mistakes that my older siblings made, right? One of them had a kid like in high school, right? One of my sisters had a kid in high school, right? And then one of my brothers had his first kid in high school. And so that was looking back, I think that made a big impact on me because I, was an uncle at 8 years old, right? And so I definitely believe that affected how I perceived like dating and sex and relationships, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so I don't know if there's a correlation, but those two siblings that I mentioned, one of my sisters and one of my brothers, them both having kids, late during high school, they both got in quite a bit of trouble. And they both were in and out of jail. And to this day, I have letters tucked away in a box somewhere in my closet from each of them writing me when they were in jail, based more or less like pleading with me, like imploring me and encouraging me to do, quote unquote, what's right, right, and to listen to mom and dad and stay focused, right, on your whatever you're doing, school, athletics, church, right, that whole thing. And so that, really kind of shaped how I, grew up, right? And I think there's positives and some negatives, of course, but I think I learned a lot from their mistakes. And
Do you,
also, I think
do you, sorry, sorry,
um,
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
on
ahead.
the on the positive side, right? I I see what my dad did, his willingness to love my mom and take her in along with four kids that weren't his, right? As a strong male leader in our culture, that's rare, man.
Yep.
You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So like I feel like eternally grateful for, not only my dad, my mom, and my sibling, and like my dad, like just is such a patient and I don't know what like how to describe it. Such a patient and loving and like wonderful human being. Yet he was still able to be that strong, masculine male leadership that's in the kids' lives every day, right? So that seeing that, I guess that's some of the negatives, but some of the positives as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And in regards to your siblings, do you feel like, watching their ups and their downs, receiving those letters, experiencing some of the pain of not being able to see them on a daily basis, do you feel like you genuinely learned and then took those lessons you learned from their actions and actually applied it to your life, or do you feel like you had to go through some head knocks and just go prove it to yourself on your own as well? The reason I ask is I see that happen a lot of times where or I've had a lot of conversations, a lot of individuals where they talk about their older siblings and kind of learning from them, but that they still went out there and did some stupid shit and had to learn for themselves. So like, I'm just wondering, for you, do you feel like you really were able to learn up front and then kind of move accordingly from then on out? Or were there some bumps in the road when you were a teenager that you feel like you really had to struggle to overcome because you didn't expect it, if that makes sense?
Yes, sir. So I would say it's a bit of both. Um, like for example, seeing my two siblings have children at a young age, that kind of scared me in a way, and so I remained a virgin until college, and so that scared the mess of it out of me. Like,
Yeah,
see, you have a kid at a young age, it's life altering, right?
absolutely.
And so I was pretty involved with church. My mom, very involved in church since, since I was a little kid, as far back as I can remember. And when we moved from Kansas City, Kansas to Lenexa, and that's where my parents live to this day, my mom got involved with another church that really was a great support for her and the family. And we were there like Sunday church service, Wednesday evening church service, Thursday night devotional, Friday night, you're spending time fellowshipping with the other members, and sometimes on Saturday too. So it was literally in that church environment with those, with that group 3 times a week at least. And so that I think helped as well keep me away from the streets and away from trouble. That, along with seeing what my older siblings had gone through as well. And, what was the other part of that question?
No, that it was essentially, just seeing, were you able to truly take in the experiences your older siblings went through and actually apply the lessons you learned from watching them to your life, or did you kind of ignore those lessons?
Okay.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was
yeah.
something else I was going to mention on that. I still had to go through some things, right? Like, I am very fortunate. Didn't get caught. One of my brothers was straight trapping, and one of my sisters, I'm pretty sure, was kind of in that trap mode for a while. And seeing that, and like I still was like mischievous, if that makes sense. And I still like, you're an adolescent, and it's like, all right, well, I saw kind of what they did and how they got caught up and got in trouble, so I can still kind of skirt the line and maneuver a certain way, thinking I'm slick and not getting caught. I'm, very, very fortunate that I did not get caught, but I still, was smoking weed, started selling weed, like late high school and in college and after college. And, I don't know how I did not get caught, but that is one thing like that I think, I learned from my siblings as well. So
Absolutely. No. And I think I definitely identify with the, being able to see how my older siblings were moving and got caught up, and then being able to like have the choice to make some good decisions or have the choice to manipulate the learnings I had to kind of apply to my life and make it a little bit more efficient. Luckily enough, I think probably in your scenario as well, you cut some close lines between effing up your life and not effing up your life, and you're like, okay, never mind. I already saw how that hurt my siblings. I don't know why I'm out here playing. Let me go back inside. Yeah, so I feel you on that. So I wanted to ask you, that transition from, although I don't know how old you were, but that transition from KCK to Lenexa, and just the differences in school systems, the differences in community, what was that like for you? If it was something that stands out to you in terms of your early adolescence, like what was that like to you in terms of potential culture shifts, potentially building relationships with people who may not understand your background? What was that like in terms of, you being a under 18 individual in a community that there's not so many of us or people that look like us?
Yes, great question. So I was 5 years old when my family moved from Kansas City, Kansas. We lived right across the street from the projects, bro. So I was 5, and like my parents got into real estate. Dad started making some bread, and saw some opportunities in housing, right? And I remember going to kindergarten for 2 weeks right before we moved. And I remember, few times walking to and from school, because we lived, just maybe 6, 7 blocks from that elementary school, right? And I, looking back, I remember in that classroom and in that school, seeing other kids that look like me, like brown and black kids, right? Not as many white kids. And when we moved to Lenexa, to suburbia, it was the exact opposite. I went from being, you know, you know, one of many minorities, black and brown persons, to 2 weeks later, I'm in a classroom where I'm the only black guy. And that kind of became the thing, like through elementary, through middle school, high school, you start to see a little bit more diversity. But as far as how that impacted me, my mindset and growing, as a kid, I didn't think nothing of it, really. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've kind of told this story before, and how I describe it is like between, the age of 5 and maybe like 10, right? And then after, like, you're just playing, like you got friends, you're hanging out, not a care in the world, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I would say between the ages of 10 and like maybe more like 9, between the ages of like 9 and 12, there's kind of a shift that happens. You're kind of moving from childhood to adolescence, and you're picking up what more is going on in your surroundings, and you start to comprehend things, and you hear certain things. And then that's when you start to hear more about skin color and the race, and word can run fast and jump high, right? And like different things start to come up, right? And then you start to hear some derogatory things, right? And looking back, it's kind of clear to see, like, hey, as kids, we learn that the discrimination and trying to think of another word for it, but we learned that from the other people who were around us, right? And so I remember like having a next door neighbor that like called me the N word on multiple occasions, like on the basketball court in elementary school. This is like 5th, 6th grade. Okay. And then he did, I remember him doing it again, um, like around that same time frame. And I'm like, this guy is looking back, I can think and say, all right, this guy was learning this from someone, right? I don't know if it was, well, probably his mom and maybe his dad and maybe uncle, right? They learned that somewhere. And so that, you get into adolescence, and you go through middle school. And I was always a nice, genuine, loving person, and I could get along with everybody, bro. And I was a talented athlete, so people looked up to me for that and respected me for that. Pretty good looking, and when I wanted to do well in school, I could. So I was super popular growing up, and I can say, like, overall, it wasn't as bad as some people would make it out to be, because it was like early 90s, and then through the early 2000s. And it, we definitely come across prejudices, stuff, and racist people and that sort of thing, but it's nowhere near what I could imagine was going on between the 30s and 60s and so
Of
forth.
course.
So
And what our parents went through. Yeah.
exactly. So I got friends from elementary school to this day. I was hanging out with
Absolutely.
one of them Sunday. It's my best
Love it.
friend since 4th grade, white
I
guy.
love it.
You
I
know what I'm
love it.
saying? Met
I
him
love it.
met him the first day of 4th grade. We still rock. We still are close.
That's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
so I ran into his sister last week. Saw her, gave her a big hug. So that's kind of the thing. Like, most people don't care, right? Majority of the people don't care. And I think that goes, I think all cultures need to hear that and understand that, because I feel like there's a lot of Black folks and minorities that don't want to deal with or don't want to be a part of or around other cultures, if that makes sense. And I'm
Right.
like, well, I mean, I kind of see where you're coming from, but like people are people, we're all human beings, we're all going through struggles. On the inside, we're all the same, right? We all bleed red. So that's going through that experience, kindergarten through elementary school, I think helped me a lot to be able to relate to all different types of people, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
now that I'm, 37 years old and in business, man, I can walk into any place, right? Anywhere and pick up the vibe and probably get along with somebody, almost anybody in there. So I feel very blessed to have gone through those experiences, bro, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think if most people who listen to the show go back and listen through like the past 130 plus episodes, they'll realize a similar, um, a similar, I don't know, trajectory, cadence, whatever the word is to use between a lot of my guests and them, starting off in one community and then the parents kind of quote unquote upgrading in life and then moving to the suburbs and then having to transition from us, being one of many to one of few, but then learning how to thrive in that setting, learning how to communicate, respect other cultures, learn how to still be authentic while still building relationships with others. And then they come out of that, and as an adult, they're so grateful for it because they're like, wow, nowadays I can literally get along with anybody. Like I can have a better understanding, a better foundational understanding of the fact that most people don't give a shit. It's just the select few that ruin it for everyone else. And so as long as we move forward and move through life, controlling our perspective on people trying to generalize people and making sure that we don't fall into that belief that everyone is a certain way, then we can really thrive and be able to network and connect with everyone. And I do think that school system and the change between the settings and the environments that you interact in really have a massive impact on that, especially if you're in that 9 to 13 or 13 to 18, where you're really developing your mind and your moral character. So I love it. I always ask that question just because I love hearing the story. So, man, but you get into high school, you really love sports, you're a talented
For sure,
athlete.
man.
Like
Yeah.
when did you start thinking about, or when's the first time you started thinking about you're like sitting down, you're like, shit, I got to figure out what I got to do with my life once I finish high school. Like, were you like, just kind of like, I'm going to go to college, I don't need to think any further than that? Or were you like, damn, this is what I'm going to go to college for. I'm going to study this exact thing. I'm going to go this path. Like, what was your mindset at when you were like 16, 17, 18 in regards to your plans after finishing school?
So growing up, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but both of my parents do real estate for a living. And my mom, to this day, so my mom has been a realtor for the last 29, going on 30 years. And my father's been a real estate investor the last 31 years. And so when I was in high school, toward the tail end, junior, senior year, I was playing basketball and I was running track and field. And I knew in my mind, like, I have a very good shot of going and getting a scholarship for either or perhaps both sports. And so I ended up picking track and field. I went to Wichita State University, and as soon as I enrolled, I was in business classes and real estate classes. So I knew right, like as a kid, that I was gonna get into business and real estate somehow, some way, at some point in the future. I didn't know what that might look like or what that would entail, but I just kind of knew, like, hey, I'm gonna be buying and selling houses. And so I locked in and got into the entrepreneurship program, and the emphasis on that is real estate. And you take a bunch of business classes and take some sales classes, accounting, economics, and then of course some real estate finance and development, that sort of thing. And I rolled that out all the way through college, didn't switch gears at all, really. Did the 5-year plan. I redshirted 1 year for track, so I, was able to still participate for that 5th year of college. And like even before I graduated, it was 2008. It was my senior year of college, and I remember I was in a fraternity, and I remember being at the fraternity house in their like office area. It was like a study area. And I remember like using some of my student loan money to purchase my first real estate investment. And it only cost like $1,600. And it was a note that I purchased. And it, that $1,600 investment paid out, just right around $3,000 over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. And so that, kind of got me going. And then I graduated 2008. And the next year, I was back in Kansas City. I bought my first house. And so I kind of got an early start into like doing deals and purchasing real estate investments. And, it's been quite a journey since then. But yeah, to circle back on your question, I knew like right away what I was going to get into. So, yeah.
And did you have any concerns graduating? I mean, 2008, 2007, 2009 is during some funny years with money and crazy things going around across the country during that time period. So like, did you have any concerns about your success in real estate or money in general, or like how successful business and other investments were going to be? Or were you like, I already understand this process because I grew up with my parents being in the industry. I understand the ebbs and flows. Like, where was your head at, especially during that time period, and what was going on in the, financial ecosystem in America?
Yeah, so around 08 and 09, that's when we had the great financial collapse. And like coming out of college, I didn't know any better, right? I'm thinking, all right, like I'm just gonna start working and I'm gonna stack my bread. And when I can buy and invest, I will. And so I think like going in, of course, I had some background knowledge as far as real estate transactions and investments go. So that allowed me to be more confident. And then having, my family there support allowed me to be even more confident rolling into it. So what's funny is in '09, I bought that house from my dad, right? And for those that may not be familiar with real estate transactions, there's a way that you can purchase property and take over the previous owner's mortgage payments. It's called, buying subject to the existing financing. So I did that with my dad. Like he had purchased the house in 2004 and he had purchased it subject to the existing financing from the previous owner. So in 2009, I stepped in and took over the payments. And I remember I was living with my parents and I, was planning to rent an apartment with a good buddy of mine at the time. And we had been looking and we were, trying to figure out like what part of town we wanted to be in. And some time went by and it just so happened that my dad's house that he had owned became vacant. So I'm like, all right. At first I wasn't sure. I was like, Dad, I'm not making that much money. I don't know how that could play out. And he was like, no, you can just take over the payments. And, during that time, our administration, our government administration had tax incentives for home buyers. So even though we're like the real estate market had crashed, banks, lenders didn't want to loan money on real estate. Buyers, people didn't really want to buy real estate. I don't remember exactly what the interest rates were like at that time, but I do know that there just wasn't as much activity and people were not excited about real estate like they have been, you know, lately, right?
Years past,
And
yeah.
so I got into the house, and I started making the mortgage payments, and I had my buddy living with me, so that helped cover the mortgage payments. And then I had another buddy move in at a later date, and then they moved out, and then I had my girlfriend at the time move in for about 6 months. And then part of that time, during that 6 months period toward the tail end, my brother moved in for a little bit. So all along the way, I'm getting help with that mortgage payment. Oh, by the way, like back to the tax incentives, they had a Obama's tax credit, right? They had a first-time home buyer tax credit because they needed more movement in real estate. So there's a way to incentivize home buyers. They were paying people $8,000, bro, to buy houses in between '08 and I don't know how long it went on, at least 2 years. They were paying, I got an $8,000 check after I moved in and made like one or two mortgage payments. Of course, before, I moved in, you submit some paperwork and whatnot, and then they process it. So I'm in that mug, I get an $8,000 check for buying this house for basically no money down, just making the mortgage payments. So of that $8,000, I get $5,000 to my pops, and then I keep the other three. And I'm like, damn, this is real estate? Like I could get used to this. And then so I'm in that house for under 2 years, right? Buddies in and out, brother in and out, girlfriend out during that less than 2 year period. And you get out of college and you land a decent job. You think you got some money. I was making $30,000 to $35,000 a year as an exterminator, bro. And I started that job when I was living with my parents. So I was making like okay money. I wasn't poor. But at that point, like most people aren't making smart financial decisions. So
Right.
before I moved into that house, I bought a car. It was a used car, but the payments were still pretty high. And then like I bought that house, and I'm like, dang, like it's hard. It was hard for me to keep up with that. And I eventually moved back in to my parents' house after that, like year and a half or so. Fortunately, we were able to do a seller finance deal on the home, and so I basically, went from owner occupant to investor. So I moved back in my parents, and we made that property an investment, and we were able to cash flow that. So yeah, that's kind of like that was right out of college.
So
And
you got
then
introduced
just
to the game real early.
yeah, definitely. So that was definitely a huge blessing. And I know I took it for granted, man. Like, having parents in the industry, and like in the back of my head, I think I kind of always knew that I was going to get into it, and that I, eventually would be making decent money, good money, and have cash flow from investments. And so I still was goofing off and partying a lot, and like smoking weed a lot, drinking a lot, and just I worked a bunch of different jobs in between like 2008 and 2014 before I really, really got serious about real estate. And so it's been a journey, man. Lots of ups and downs. But I definitely feel fortunate to have grown up the way that I did, gone through school, stayed out of trouble, and to have a pretty solid family and good friends as well, man, for sure.
I love it. I love it. And right now, if I'm correct, if I remember right, you run Essential Property Services, which is a property management business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. So like, how has that experience been since you launched that business? Like, what are some key insights you've kind of learned from running a business, number one, but then number two, dealing with investors, dealing with people who own, real estate and trying to what is it, not maintain, but do everything that they want you to do efficiently. Like, how's that been dealing with investors, running a business in real estate? How's your experience
Yeah.
been? What are some challenges?
Great question. So real estate is hard. It's hard work, man. Being an entrepreneur is hard work. Um, lately, I think it comes off as being like a glamorous type of thing, but man, there's been many sleepless nights and periods where you're not getting paid. Like you got to wait to get paid sometimes. You got to perform, right? And I've been a part of, like, right now, I own 7 companies, bro. And they when you're an entrepreneur and you have multiple partners and you got, different irons in the fire, you have to structure things a certain way and you have to stay on top of your finances. And I feel like business is an entrepreneurship is a true test of character because you get immediate feedback and you have to do right by people if you want to succeed. I feel like being in business and an entrepreneur is the ultimate test of your karma in a weird kind of way because it's you, like you are the face of the company. If you're a startup, you might have a buddy rolling with you. You may not, it may be at certain times just you. And that's how I felt. It could be a lonely road sometimes. And like, not only are you the face of the company, you're the bookkeeper, you're the accountant, you're not only are the president or face of the company, you're the CEO, you're the COO, right? You're the CFO, and you're the assistant sometimes. And so it's not for the faint of heart. I tell, people, my buddies, friends, family close to me, like, yeah, you're gonna get a nice check every now and then, but you definitely earn that for sure.
Yeah, and it's
So
a
many
short
ups, so many
it's a
ups and
short
downs, bro.
experience too. Every time I talk to like
Man.
people in real estate, they talk about like some of the amazing outcomes and the types of life, the type of life you can build, but at the same time, everything's like a short hit, and you got to be ready for grit about 97% of the time. So it's like
Oh my God.
you hustling, you gritting, you calling, managing problems, putting this fire out, putting this fire out, getting a deal done, closing this deal, and then
Hmm.
you're like, oh, I get to rest. And as soon as you get to rest, boom, something else happens. And then, yeah, a little $27,000 check might hit your mailbox, and you're like, oh shit, this feels good to look at. But as
Hmm.
soon as as soon as you cash it, you get another call like, hey, look, we got to go do
Yeah.
this. And so it's like you definitely got to be ready to. And I think it's similar with just entrepreneurship in general, but definitely in real estate, like
Hmm.
you got to be ready to go, and you got to be patient waiting for that money to hit your bank account as well. And when it hits, it might look pretty, but it only look pretty for 5 minutes because then you're on to the next.
Absolutely. You've got to be an efficient money manager. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the last 4 or 5 years. And I feel like you can learn how to do it and you can read up on it and you can see how other people and hear about how other people are doing it. But it's a habit. So like when I get a check, it like I give 10% away. All right. I put 10% in savings, right? I invest another 10%. And then if I have debts, I'm putting another 10 to 20% towards credit card debt or whatever debt there is. Then, I'm looking at like all right, I've paid myself, I've given back, I put some towards savings, I've invested some, and then, the rest, bills, whatever, maybe some extra pay down on debt, and then you got food, beverage, right? Housing, and your car payment. And you've got to stay on top of it. And so it starts small. Like there's a verse in the Bible, I forget what book and chapter and verse, but it says something along the lines of like when you can take care of and show that you can handle a small amount well, then you will be blessed with a larger amount. And I 1000% believe in that, bro. I seriously, I gotta to this day, I got a check for $230, and because I've been doing practice that habit in my head, and I even wanted to write it down on the note card, but then I realized, all right, I got a $6,000 check as well, so let me hold off. Oh wait, there's another $960 check. So even on those smaller amounts, I'm gonna add those up, the 960 minus the mortgage payment, plus the 6,000, plus the $230, and I'm gonna put that on the note card, and I'm gonna split it 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, and then taking the trip in January, covering the cost of the flight for myself and my mom. I'm probably gonna need a hotel room for a couple nights. Probably gonna rent a car. Already got it mapped out, bro. And so that it's critical when you're an entrepreneur and in business. You've got to be a efficient money manager, because that's how you then can grow, and then eventually you're gonna get a fatter check. And then at that
But you don't know how to manage it.
Right, you've got to not go blow it. You know what I'm saying? You've got to stay on point. And so I'm 37, man, and I feel like I'm 37 going on 28, but I got the wisdom of a 50-year-old. You know what I'm saying? Just the different life experiences and whatnot. But yeah, you gonna learn real quick in entrepreneurship and real estate, or else you're not gonna be in the business, right?
Right. Yep.
Don't get me wrong. Like I was driving Uber up until April of this year, bro. And I finally felt like I got to a point where I had enough business coming in. I got enough decent cash flow from my investments and my businesses, and I got clients coming through the door. I'm turning clients away. Finally felt like I got to a point where I can really, really focus, more than full time on real estate. And that's something like that doesn't get discussed a whole lot in real estate. You got realtors, you got brokers, you got property managers and investors. I would say at least 90% of them have some kind of side hustle, right? You got to build the business up. And there's no shame in that. Like many times during my career, I've had 2-3 jobs, bro. And it takes time to build it up. But the great thing about it, I believe, is if you can take years. It takes years. We have to be willing to delay gratification. If you want to win big in the future, you have to look 5 to 10 years out. If you can focus on your business, the ups and downs, the grind for 5 to 10 years, on the back end of that, like odds are you're going to be doing okay, right?
Yeah.
And so there'll be ups and downs. There's obstacles almost every step of the way, but you build up a resilience. You build up a tolerance, and you learn like you have to get out of yourself. You have to go network. You've got to post. Social media is free marketing, bro. There's no excuse for us, man.
Free 99.
Yeah. So like there's so many opportunities to make money in the last several years with the information and technology combined together. Like, man, there's so many opportunities out there, but at the same time, that's a challenge because you have to focus in on like your thing. What are you gifted at, and what do you enjoy doing? And you enjoy, like, to the point where like you're doing it for free, because as an entrepreneur and business owner, over 90% of the stuff that you're doing is free. And then you get a check. And then as you're growing and developing your business, you're in 5-10 years, you develop that skill set using your gifts in your niche, to the point where you can consult with people and then they're paying you lump sum up front and all along the way as you're guiding them through the process as a professional, whatever your professionalism, or whatever your business is, so to speak. So yeah, I'm passionate about entrepreneurship and real estate. I could talk all night about that stuff. So hopefully that answers your question, bro.
No, it does. And then just to double down on something you just said, ladies and gentlemen, just write this down on a note card. You want to get paid on the back end and the front end, not just the back end. And although that process might take a while, always remember you're trying to get paid on both the front end and the back end. I always love talking to people in real estate who they the seller, they bought it, they done sold it, they done owned it, and they getting paid on all sides of it. They getting paid the seller's fee, the finder's fee, the buyer's fee. I'm like, damn, son, you done did everything. He's like, yeah, man, hey, I gotta get paid front end, back end, middle end, side end, left end. He's like, look, we a damn football team out here, defensive end, left tackle. I'm getting paid everywhere. So I love that, and it's a hustle, man. And I appreciate you and your effort. And I know that can sound strange, like, oh, you just appreciate me and my effort. You don't know me, but like for real, man, I think we got to do a better job. As a society, just respecting and having love for our fellow humans and seeing them for what they've done, seeing the effort that they're putting in, seeing them for showing up every day, seeing them for grinding and going through the grid, 3-4 jobs, exterminating cockroaches, trying to still hustle, going to college, going through a financial crisis, having family struggles at an early time of life, but still learning from it, but then going through your own, we got to pay more respect to each other as humans, not just because we're a billionaire, not just because we own a multi-million-dollar franchise, whatever the fuck it is. We just got to respect each other for, everyone still standing up on 10 toes and showing up every day. So I want to extend that gratitude and respect towards you for showing up every day and still, making time for the podcast too.
Man, I appreciate that. And it's
Absolutely.
my pleasure.
Absolutely. Sure, I do want to ask you 2 final questions. And the first one being, what is your grand vision, your big, scary dream? When you think about 10, 15 years out from now, you're going towards your 50s, like, where do you want to be? What are you wanting to achieve? Like, what is like that big, scary, hairy, scary vision that you think about on the daily where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it?
Okay, so one of my big long-term goals is to have a private equity firm, primarily for investing in real estate. But I think eventually we may end up buying other types of businesses, if that makes sense. And I want to be able to help people become wealthy through real estate investments and perhaps real estate loans, backing other real estate investors and eventually backing other real estate entrepreneurs, especially in our culture, Black and brown folks, because the fact of the matter is the access to the capital for women and minorities it's ridiculous. It's absurd. That's a big, huge goal of mine in the future. Who knows how it'll play out, but I truly believe that the investing in real estate now and up until that point will allow it to happen, because the clients that I have now and the partners that I have now, my hope and my prayer and my goal is to be working with them for the next 2-3 decades, and ideally as long as I'm alive. And that's to me is it's such a relationship business. Business is all about relationships, and I would much rather go deeper with a handful of clients, helping them to truly create wealth. And we say passive income, but residual income, or income that comes in, unearned income that's hitting their bank account every month, whether they go to work or not. I want to help me and my partners get to that point, and I want to help as many, my closest clients get to that point as well. And I believe that by helping them get there, that dream will be achieved. So
I love it. I love it. It's your last day on earth. You've lived to be 110, 115 years old. You've been able to experience everything you've wanted to experience. You've launched a private equity fund and funded and helped thousands of Black and brown businesses grow, and other businesses as well. You're growing, thriving. You've had kids, you've had a partner, and everything's been lit, but it's your last day on earth. And your great grandkids are interviewing you, and they ask you, great granddad, what's one piece of advice on how to live a good life? What are you going to tell them?
wow, amazing question. Let me think for a second. One piece of advice. Oh my gosh. Um, Stay grounded and stay tapped in with God. Call God every single day. Stay tapped in. Oh my goodness, He will guide you. Um, you know, um, Take time to meditate and pray and read every single day. And love people, love up on people, no matter who they are, where they're from, how they sound, what color they are. Love up on people. That would be my advice to them.
I love it, man. Luther Wilson, thank you so much. We appreciate you making time to come on to the Voices of Value podcast. And now you've officially been added to the Voices of Value
Okay.
list. Although your voice was already valuable, you've officially been added to the VOV list, man. So thank you for joining the alumni. Thank you for sharing, your words of wisdom. Thank you for sharing your story. And before we sign out of here today, can you make sure and plug where people can find you if they want to do business with you, where people can find you if they want to interview you, where people can find you if they just want to follow your journey?
Outstanding. Thank you again, Collis. You can find me on Facebook. It's Luther935. I'm on Instagram, Luther, the number 3, and I'm on LinkedIn, Luther Wilson III. So you can find me there, reach out. We can talk business, we can talk entrepreneurship, we can talk life. All right,
I
let's
love
get
it.
it.
I love it. And Luther, since we're both in the KC metro area, make sure you shoot me your number. Shoot me your number via email. We'll connect for coffee here in the next coming weeks.
Sounds good, brother.
Yes, sir.
All
Be
right,
at
peace.
peace. Thank you, everyone. Peace.
All right, have a good one.